How do you structure your entire blog so the thing will actually work for you versus just kind of flying by the seat of your pants and not really having any overall strategy? That's what I want to talk about in this video. I want to talk about your blog content strategy. We're going to talk really big picture here, and I want to give you a plan of action. Hey there, David Risley here with blogmarketingacademy.com. Today I want to talk about some broad strategy with regard to the overall setup of your blog, because what I have seen, and personally I've done it too, is that a lot of people approach their blog from flying by the seat of their pants. And so basically they're like, oh, I need to write something. And they just kind of, whenever an idea comes to them, they just write it. And you put that out over time. And what happens is that you end up having a blog that has a lot of content in it that's not really serving any major function for you. Your category structure might end up getting really long because you're just kind of making it up as you go. You've got probably old calls to action back there, if you even have any, and it's just outdated stuff. And that's basically not a strategically run blog. And I know because I'm in the middle of fixing it on my site right now as a part of a content audit. It's something that I've known for a long time, but I've had this blog at blogmarketingacademy.com for 15 years now. I'm having to do the math in my head. It's been around a really long time. And when you have a blog for that long, you end up building up a lot of trash back there. There's just things that are just not relevant anymore, and it needs to be fixed. So part of what I'm doing as my content audit is to go back and revisit my overall content strategy. So that's what I want to talk to you about right now, is the overall content strategy that you can kind of envision the ideal scene of what you want your blog to look like, so that as you move forward, you're actually moving toward an overall plan that you've put in place beforehand. There's a difference between strategy and tactics. Tactics are those smaller things that we do, those little things that we do in order to execute some part of a broader strategy. The strategy is a broad plan that we devise in order to tackle some area and expand upon it. Okay? Now, in order to have a strategy, you need to first understand what your goal is, because that sort of guides the entire thing. What are you actually trying to accomplish, and what do you want it to look like? So with the goal in mind, one devises the strategy that they want to use to accomplish it. That strategy is kind of a big picture thing, and it's like an overall plan of attack. But that strategy then breaks down into these smaller tactics. And these tactics are the individual things that we do. And in the context of our blog, we'd be talking about writing individual blog posts, or how long we make a blog post, or sharing it out on social media. Those are the little tactics. But again, all those tactics, all those little actions are aligned by an overall strategy, which again, the whole strategy needs to be aligned toward the overall goal of our blog. And so what we have here is a hierarchy, and we want all of our daily actions to be in alignment toward this overall strategy. Okay, so let's look at how this applies to our blog. So the purpose of your blog is basically comes down to three things. First of all, you need to attract your target market and bring them into your place of business. Okay. Secondly, you want to help them. You want to actually give them some answers, give them an aha moment, and answer some questions, like answer what they originally came to you for. And then third, you want to convert them either into a lead or into a customer. Those are the big three. It's like a triad, and that's what your blog is supposed to do. And so now that we know what your blog is supposed to do, we can begin to talk about what the strategy needs to be in order to make that thing actually happen. Your content strategy is going to guide the overall body of content that is and will become your blog. You're sort of taking this holistic view of what your blog is ultimately going to look like over time. So this is a long-term plan. It's something that's going to guide what you're intentionally working on when you choose your topics, your category structures, and even down to the details of every post that you create. When you're building up this content strategy, you're actually just envisioning the entire thing. It's kind of, you're looking at it like this body of work. And so instead of your blog just morphing into something over time and being really reactive, you're actually envisioning the ideal scene of what you want the blog to look like. And so some of the questions that you're going to be asking are, what topics are most important for the blog to cover? What are the guiding principles and the beliefs that you want your blog to convey to your readers? How do you intend to help them? what content formats are going to best serve these guys, and then what are the next steps that you want to put in front of them so that it will convert your readers into customers. So these are all aspects of the blog content strategy, and this is really big picture stuff that we're looking at here. Remember, at the core of all business is what we call product market fit. It's where we need to have the thing that we're actually offering, the thing that we're selling, needs to be just a perfect fit with a market that has the needs and the wants that are going to want your offer in order to solve that thing for them. And so we have a perfect marriage between the market and the product, and it's called product market fit. Well, right there in the middle of that is the blog. The blog's entire purpose is to attract the market and funnel them into your product. But we're going to do that by way of helping them solve problems. Not everybody's going to convert. Not everybody's going to turn into a lead or a customer, but we want to help people get results one way or the other when they enter our place of business on our blog. And so that blog is basically the glue. It's what's going to bring the market in. With that in mind, you need to sit down and you need to start making a list of the major areas, the major problems that your target market is going to have, and start listing them down. Like, what are the pain points? What are the things that they're searching for? What are the problems that they're experiencing? And then start listing those down as the major areas of things that you can solve, because this is going to start to formulate the overall content plan that we're putting together. Now, these top-level concerns, these top-level pain points for your market are what we're going to turn into what we're going to call content silos. Now, content silos is a term that's based off of, well, what you see here, which is these silos where these big, tall cylinder tanks that are used to store things. They're used to store different types of products out on farms and keep it all together. Now, in terms of content, we want to think of a silo as one of these major topics. It's a sort of category or a container under which you're going to file a whole series of future blog posts, guides, lead magnets, and calls to action. As an example of these content silos in action, you can go to blogmarketingacademy.com, and right there in the top menu, you've got blog, and you'll see when you drop it down that I've got 6 major content silos here on my site. And basically each one of these is essentially a container for a body of work that goes underneath it. Now, I'm actually in the middle of a content audit where I am really fine-tuning and restructuring some of the stuff within each of these silos, but these are the silos, okay? And if we click on one of them, you'll see what we've got here is a page which has some introductory text to it. We've got some of the top articles within that silo. We've got a call to action, in which in this case is a lead magnet to a free worksheet that's specific to membership sites, because that's what this particular content silo is about. And then below that, we've got a bunch of the other blog posts that would go underneath this silo of membership sites that are not necessarily my flagship or pillar post here, but they're just other posts that are within the category. And then I ended off with another call to action for something that they can actually do or something they can actually buy. So I've got an opt-in and I've got a buy as 2 calls to action. You don't necessarily need both, but it is a way that you can do it. Now, the content silos on my site are very broad, I will say. Now, they're obviously all relevant to my target market, but these are all things that I've identified as the things that are the most relevant to my audience and the things that people are most likely to come to me for based on some traffic analysis and just my experience with the market. Now, the content silos for your site are obviously going to be different, and they don't necessarily need to be broad categories. It really does depend on the nature of your space. For example, I've got a couple of clients of mine that are in the chiropractic and kind of the natural health space, and theirs are going to be different. They might have content or silos that are more about back pain or muscle tightness and things like that. And then underneath that, you might have some posts that go along with those things. So you're kind of treating them as major categories for content that's relevant to that market, but also you're orienting them around the things that your target market is most likely to come to you wanting to solve. Because again, we want to ultimately help them and funnel them into our offer. Well, if you think about what a chiropractor does, they fix all those problems. So the chiropractor can use their website, present some really good, solid, actionable information to help that person right on the blog with the pain that they're having, but then say, hey, if you need more than that, we've got this. And it's just a natural progression. to dive just a little bit deeper into how these silos are now going to translate down into the things that we're going to build around them, I'll just bring you into my own Dynalist, which is the outline program I use, and we'll go down to the structure here, and you'll see the structure that I'm using, and I don't have every little thing planned out. Some of this I actually do have, I just haven't put it into the outline yet. But basically, we've got the major content silos. If I expand these, or let's go how do we collapse them all? There we go. Here's the major content silos that we've got on my site: membership sites, business and entrepreneurship, right on down. But in each one, we've got an outline that I use, which is the flagship post. This is going to be basically your pillar post in that particular silo. And you may have just one, you may have more than one, okay? Right now, I've got the ultimate blueprint to building your membership site, because that would obviously be a very hot topic for membership sites for my market. Another common question is just when is the right time to actually start the membership site? And then I've got one here called marketing and growth strategies for a successful membership site. Now that one is on my plan. I've not actually written it yet, but so you kind of see how this starts to come together. Now under post, I haven't outlined everything, but this is where we start to get into the more granular topics related to membership sites, and we can plan those out. So I've got a bunch of them that have already been written, and I've got some that I'm going to insert into this plan in order to fill in gaps in my overall library of content. For lead magnets, I've got one called the Membership Site Planner, and that lead magnet is one that's in the document library of my site that's specific to this particular content silo. And then when we look at the offers, I've got a few here, and some of them don't exist yet, but they're going to. One is the Membership Site Blueprint, which is one of my training courses. One is to engage me with tech services, where basically I'll build their membership site for them. I'm also going to put together a package service, so it's basically a ready-to-go membership site that I'll just be able to set up in a very, very short amount of time and get them off to the races. And then lastly, I can also take my strategy call that I do all the time for various purposes, but I can position it as a way to discuss their overall membership site plan. But as you go down to my other silos, you'll see that we've got the same basic template. We've got the flagship post, and you can again have more than one. The overall post, like a general list of post ideas underneath it. The lead magnets are going to go with that content silo, and then the offers. Okay, and I do that all the way down in each one. Oh, this one for promotion and traffic is a good way to show you too that you can actually put like subcategories underneath the content silo. There's no reason why you cannot do that, but I do encourage you to not make this too long-winded. It's generally best to try to keep your overall amount of content silos to just like 5 or 6 of them, because if you get too much longer than that, you run a very high risk of just going so broad with your discussion and your content that it's going to be really hard to market that stuff. Okay, so you just need to be a little bit strategic about how many content silos you put there, and don't overwhelm yourself or anybody else. Now, as you can see in my outline, there are stuff in there that hasn't been totally done yet, okay? And that's an important point that I want to make to you here, is that what you're doing here is not necessarily constraining yourself by whatever your blog might look like now. I'm obviously in the middle of doing a content audit and coming up with a new revised strategy for myself, and then taking my blog and shaping it into that strategy. And so when you're coming up with this strategy, I want you to outline this stuff out in a similar fashion to what I've done. You can use any outlining program. You can use Google Docs if you want. You can also use a mind map program. It can be very helpful to do this. And outline your main content silos. And then for each content silo, I want you to break it down into the 4 main components, which are going to be your flagship pillar post for that silo, an overall list of post ideas and topics, your lead magnet for that content silo, and then the offers, or taking whatever global offer you might have for your business and changing the hook for it so that it's going to be most relevant to that particular content silo. Those are the important components that I want you to include in every one of the content silos that you do. And I want you to kind of mind map that out and outline it, but don't constrain yourself by what your blog looks like right now. Okay, because what you're doing is you're creating your ideal scene. You're creating where you want your blog to go by creating this plan. One little thing too is that when it comes to your topics, don't worry about trying to come up with exact blog post headlines at this point. Just feel free if you need to kind of list topics and kind of get the juices flowing underneath each one of these silos. You can go back and you can massage that stuff a little bit later. Now, real quick, a few quick little mechanical things to keep in mind for how this is going to work, because you're mapping lead magnets and you're mapping calls to action to this stuff. Now, when it comes to your silos, I do recommend you create an actual landing page for each one of those silos. And when you go to my site, you can see that that's what I've done. It's not just a raw category archive listing. It's an actual page that I've put there for this purpose with some intro text, and I'm really putting everything in there in a way where that becomes a major, reference post, so to speak, for the topic of that particular content silo. Okay, so that's one important point. And then once you create those silo pages, what you can do is use your SEO plugin. I personally use Rank Math, and go to your category settings inside of WordPress, and you can actually set up a redirect so that whenever anybody tries to click on a breadcrumb or something and go to your raw category listing archive of your theme, they'll get redirected to the silo instead. And so it's a much more cohesive setup there for the way your categories will be presented. Take some control over it instead of just defaulting to whatever your theme automatically does. Okay. Now, another thing is that when it comes to your lead magnet or your call to action, you're going to be obviously embedding those into the blog posts themselves that are going to be across that content silo. You want to always make sure that that you've got a default lead magnet for that silo, that if you don't have a specific content upgrade that you're giving them, you default down to the main one for that content silo, and you make sure that you present that as a call to action. Now, putting it into the blog post itself is always a good idea. It's usually going to convert the best. If you do use a sidebar, have it go there. If you use some type of a pop-up plugin, what you can actually do is have that opt-in basically present itself automatically for any post that's categorized under that particular content silo. And so that way you'll make sure that any blog content that you do within the silo is going to get the most relevant lead magnet that you have available for them to bring them into your email list. And by the way, you could do the exact same thing with your offers. Use category targeting for calls to action where they slide up, come up on the side, what have you. There's a lot of things that you can do with WordPress where you can actually target these things to the silos and automate some of it so you don't have to do it manually every single time. Okay, so let's wrap this thing up. What I have found is that too many blog owners get too focused on tactics before they ever have a strategy in place to begin with. They start worrying about things like how long should my blog post be, or they start thinking of pillar post ideas without any overall plan for why they would choose those particular topics for their pillar post ideas. They don't have any real content marketing plan on how their blog content is supposed to actually conduct any actual marketing for anything and actually build the list or actually lead to actual sales. The entire point of coming up with a real blog content strategy is to solve those problems so that you have a plan of action, so that when you actually have created that content plan for your site, essentially you know exactly what you're going to be doing when you sit down to work on your blog. You you know what topics you're going to be talking about, and you're actually creating a body of work. It's not just a blog. It's not like, oh my gosh, I need to post something every Monday and let me just send something out there. You're actually creating a body of work that you can look at in a year or 2 years down the road and go, wow, this thing has really turned into a really useful body of work that I'm proud of and actually fuels my business. That's what you want it to look like. And so you create this plan, you envision that ideal scene, you outline that bad boy out, and then you go to town, and over time, you actually are going to create the content to actually make your plan come to fruition. Okay, you're going to create the lead magnets if they don't exist right now. You're going to create the blog posts if they don't exist, or if you identify gaps on things that you haven't actually covered yet. If you've got some older content that kind of fits the bill, go back and modify it and make it more useful. What I've called the Redwood strategy in the past, about revisiting content over and over again and just making it better every single time, is something that's a perfect fit with having a real content strategy for your blog. Because when you've got a real content strategy and your body of work is actually getting closer to what you want, well, sometimes you don't have to go and actually create a brand new post. You could just go back and modify something and just make some other piece of the strategy better than it already was. And this is going to be way more effective for you than flying by the seat of your pants with your blog like most people do. All right. So that's what I've got to say about blog content strategy. It's what I am doing myself right now. I'm kind of doing it as part of a content audit, and it's what I recommend that you do as well. If you would like some input from me on your blog content strategy, you know that I do strategy calls. I'm obviously happy to discuss your site with you and your overall content strategy. So just head on over to blogmarketingacademy.com and you can actually schedule that strategy call, and we'll make that the topic of conversation. Obviously, we could talk about other things or other concerns that you might have with your site as well, but we can put this content plan together for you, something that's going to make sense for your audience and give you some guidance as you move into the future with your site. If you have any other questions, feel free to go below and ask, and I'll be there to answer your question. Talk to you later.